It's a Tuesday at 11:47 p.m. when your phone shows 23 missed calls and a text from the label's head that says only, "Do not let him talk to anyone." You are in a rental car outside a Walgreens in Atlanta. You have been managing Darius Cole for 14 months. You know what this means before you dial back. The clip is already at 4 million views. It will be at 11 million by morning. You call Darius. He picks up on the first ring, which means he's awake and pleased with himself, which is the combination that has cost you, by your own running count, approximately $2.3 million in collapsed deals over the past year. You tell him to say nothing. He says he already did 3 more. You sit in the parking lot. The receipt from your coffee is on the passenger seat. You are the most important person in the career of the most controversial rapper alive, and you are losing. Your name is not famous. That is the first thing. In this industry, the people whose names you know are not the ones doing the work that keeps everything standing. You are 29. You live in Silver Lake for $2,100 a month, and your job title on paper is artist manager, which means you are the person who answers when no one else will. You grew up in Stockton. Not the good part. Your mom worked dispatch for a trucking company, $38,000 a year. Your dad drove a city bus for 22 years and retired with a pension that covered the basics. You were not poor in the way that makes a good story. You were poor in the way that makes a person very good at math. Cal State Sacramento on a partial scholarship. Communications because someone said it was practical. Junior year interning at a regional promotions company that handled mid-level touring acts through the Central Valley. Unpaid. 54 hours a week. You learned that the music business runs on relationships and float who owes whom, and who can cover the gap between when money is promised and when it arrives. You were good at tracking both. By 25, you had a manager's license and 2 clients. One was a regional R&B singer with 40,000 to 60,000 monthly listeners, depending on whether he'd released anything that quarter. The other was a Latin trap producer who made good music and kept missing deadlines, which in this industry is the same as making bad music. You made $43,000 that year, $51,000 the year after. Neither number was enough. Both were proof you were moving. What you were good at was not relationships in the glad-handing, dinner-table sense. What you were good at was systems. You understood contracts the way other people understood lyrics, the clause that seemed standard until it wasn't. The royalty structure that looked generous until you ran it at 3 different streaming rates. You could read a deal memo and find the 3 places it would hurt your client before the label's lawyer finished explaining why they were industry standard. That skill is worth considerably more than $51,000 a year. It is also the skill that makes you attractive to people who need problems managed rather than celebrated. You had been doing this 4 years when a woman named Celeste, who worked A&R at a mid-major label, called on a Tuesday in March and said she had someone you should meet. She didn't elaborate. You had worked with Celeste once on a licensing deal that took 6 months longer than it should have and ended correctly. She respected that you hadn't complained about the 6 months.
You said yes.
What you didn't know from that phone call, what you had no way of knowing in a Silver Lake apartment with the window open and a podcast running, was that the meeting Celeste was arranging would account for the next 3 years of your life and the specific version of yourself you would become inside them. Darius Cole is 24, from Memphis, and has had 3 managers in 26 months. The first quit. The second was fired via a voice memo that Darius then posted publicly, which itself became a news cycle. The third filed a civil suit settled for an amount neither party can disclose. Celeste tells you this over coffee in Culver City on a Thursday afternoon. She tells you matter-of-factly, the way a contractor describes load-bearing walls before demo. She wants you to understand the architecture before you agree to enter the building. Darius has 2.3 million monthly listeners, a mixtape that charted at 34 on the Billboard 200, a follow-up album the label has been waiting on for 14 months, a pending charge in Harris County, Texas, disorderly conduct likely reduced, a history with 2 major festival bookers that has made certain summer slots functionally unavailable. He has said, in 3 separate interviews, things that required written responses from 2 other artists, a production company, and once, briefly, a sitting city councilman in Atlanta. He has also made, in Celeste's assessment and in the assessment of everyone at the label who has listened carefully, some of the most formally interesting rap music released in the past 4 years. Both things are true. You register that immediately. The meeting with Darius happens 4 days later in a studio in Burbank at 11 p.m., because that is when he works. He is smaller than you expect. A hoodie from a college he didn't attend. A sandwich from a place that closed at 9, which means someone got it for him, which tells you something about the current structure. He talks for 45 minutes about the album, what he wants it to mean, which producers he will work with, and which he won't, and exactly why. He is precise. He is coherent. He is not what the press coverage describes. That is the first thing you file away. The offer is $8,500 a month retainer plus 15% of net against an 18-month term with a 90-day exit clause. Standard terms. What is not standard is the 2-page addendum Celeste's team has drafted. Pre-approved communication channels, a 4-hour label notification window on any public incident, a list of 7 named journalists with whom all contact must be routed through the label's publicist. You read it twice at the table. You understand what it means. It means the label has already mapped the failure modes. You take the job. 1 sentence. No drama. The first week, Darius calls at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday to say he's agreed to an interview with a podcast you've never heard of, hosted by someone whose last notable moment was a public argument with another rapper 18 months ago. The interview is in 4 hours. 7 calls in 40 minutes. You get it postponed. Darius is annoyed but not resistant, more than you expected, less than you needed. That is what the job is. Not the music, not the 15%. The job is the 6:47 a.m. call and the 7 calls after it. The gap between who Darius Cole is in a studio at 11 p.m. talking about his album and who he becomes the moment a camera presents itself. This is a system that generates its own weather. You are 29 years old and you have just agreed to manage it. The first 3 months look like this. Week 2. Darius is dropped from a regional festival in Phoenix after a promoter surfaces a 6-month-old interview in which Darius made a comment about another act on the lineup. You spend 11 hours over 2 days negotiating a kill fee of $22,000, which is 40% of the contract guarantee. You take it because litigation costs more and produces a paper trail. Darius posts nothing. That is a win. Week 6. A collaboration collapses because Darius changes 3 lines of a verse without clearing the change, and the producer considers one of the new lines a direct reference to a personal situation he has not made public. He is correct. A week of lawyers and publicists before the track is quietly shelved. No press. The producer does not comment. You remember his name. Month 2. A video from a parking lot in Inglewood circulates on a Friday night. Darius arguing with a valet attendant. 47 seconds. By Saturday morning, 800,000 views. By Sunday, 2.1 million. You draft 3 statement options before 8 a.m. Saturday, rank them by risk, send them to Celeste's team. They choose the second. Darius refuses. 4 hours on the phone. He posts his own version shorter, less apologetic, technically accurate. The cycle moves on in 6 days. 6 days is fast. You note it. The system you build is structural, not complicated. You are the first call on anything public-facing, before the label, before the publicist, before whoever Darius is with at 2 a.m. 3 journalists worked consistently, not friends, not allies. People who understand that access has a price, and the price is predictability. Informal notification arrangements with people inside the 2 platforms where Darius is most likely to cause problems. None of it written down. Written things become discovery. In private, Darius is methodical about the music in ways that keep surprising you. 8-hour sessions, sometimes 12. He doesn't leave until something is resolved. He has opinions about sonic architecture, the relationship between a hi-hat pattern and a vocal cadence, that are specific and defensible and occasionally right in ways that people with formal training take years to develop. You sit in on 3 sessions in the first month. You don't need to be there. You go because understanding what he is building is the only way to understand what you are protecting. What you tell yourself. The controversies are behavioral, not structural. Behavioral problems have containment solutions. You have contained each one. Streaming is up 34% from month 1 to month 3. A sync deal closes for $180,000. 2 festival slots confirmed for the following summer. The machine is working. You are the reason it is working. Month 8, the album drops. 14 tracks. Weather system. First week numbers. 41 million streams. Billboard 200 debut at 11. A publication that does not ordinarily review rap calls it structurally ambitious. 3 late-night invitations in the same week. You take 2. Month 9, the tour deal. 41 dates. North America and Europe. Guarantees totaling $3.8 million against a venue percentage. The routing takes 3 weeks because certain markets require conversations with promoters who have reservations about Darius Pran. Reservations you address not by disputing them but by structuring the financial terms. So the promoter's downside is contained. That is the only language that works. You become fluent in it. The tour sells out 31 of 41 dates in 72 hours. The remaining 10 within the month. Total gross, $4.2 million. You are 30 years old. This is the best professional year of your life. Inside month 7, a situation arose. A woman had attended 3 consecutive shows on a West Coast promotional run Darius completed ahead of the album release. Not press, not industry. She communicated with someone on Darius's production team in a way the production team flagged to you. What she communicated described an incident at the 3rd show that, if accurate, was not a behavioral problem with a containment solution. You read her messages on a Thursday evening in a parking structure in Burbank. Engine off. The smell of concrete coming through the cracked window. You read them twice. You called Celeste. Celeste connected you to the labels outside counsel, a firm in Century City that handles, in the language of their retainer, matters requiring sensitive resolution. The firm contacted the woman. 3 weeks later, you were told the matter was resolved. A non-disclosure agreement was in place, and the matter was closed. You were not told the amount. You did not ask. You accepted that framing because the tour was in final negotiations and because you had spent 8 months building something that was working, and because the people offering the framing were professionals whose job was to manage these things correctly. That evening, you drove to a studio in Culver City. Darius was finishing a vocal overdub. He played you the track when it was done, standing in the booth with headphones around his neck, and it was genuinely good, and you told him so. Both things were true at the same time. You did not examine that yet. The story breaks on a Wednesday at 7:14 a.m. Not through your crisis channels. Through a text from a number you don't recognize containing a link and 3 words. You should look. A journalist, not one of your 3. Not someone you have any agreement with, has published a 6,800-word investigation in a publication with 2.4 million monthly readers. It describes a pattern, not one incident. 4 years, 3 cities, multiple women who attended Darius Cole events in professional or semi-professional capacities. 2 named directly. Others corroborated but not identified. A non-disclosure agreement referenced. The amount not given. The law firm in Century City is named. You make the calls. Celeste in 4 minutes. The publicist in 6. General counsel in 11. Every prior crisis produced a prepared position from someone in that chain, a statement in a drawer, a journalist already briefed. This time there is a pause on each call that lasts slightly too long, and then a version of, "We need to assess." By noon, the story has been picked up by 7 outlets. By 3 p.m., a sportswear brand with an $600,000 licensing agreement issues a statement using the phrase values alignment and announces it is pausing the partnership. Pausing is what brands say when they mean ending but want the option to claim otherwise. You have used that word yourself. Darius calls at 4:17 p.m. He is not panicked. He has a statement. You read it in the car outside your building, engine running. 190 words, 4 uses of the word privacy. Nothing denied specifically. You tell him not to post it. He posts it at 6:03 p.m. The response to the statement is worse than the response to the article. You know exactly what that means and watch it happen anyway. There is a woman quoted in the piece, 27 years old, venue coordinator, Portland, Oregon, $42,000 a year. Her name is not used. The piece gives her 2 paragraphs. She reported the incident to a venue manager who documented it. She was subsequently contacted by a representative of Darius Cole's management. You were the management. You made that call from a parking structure in Burbank. You remember the concrete smell. You remember driving to Culver City afterward. She is 27. She coordinated venues. This is her life, not her data point. 3 days after the article, Celeste calls on a Friday at 6 p.m. and says to come in Monday. In person. You know what that means. The label's general counsel is in the room. The Century City firm has a representative on the phone. Celeste has a folder she does not open for the first 12 minutes. When she opens it, she slides 3 documents across. The first is a timeline. 26 months beginning 14 months before you were hired. 7 incidents. 5 cities. 1-line descriptions. A column for resolution. A column for amount. The amounts total $580,000. Not $340,000, the number you had estimated from what you knew. $580,000 across 7 agreements, each administered by the Century City firm, each carrying a non-disclosure clause, each resolved without Darius's direct involvement in the negotiation because his involvement was, as a matter of legal strategy, something to be avoided. The second document is a communication log, every contact between you and the Century City firm. 11 exchanges over 14 months. The first is your call from the parking structure in Burbank. The last is an email from 3 months ago confirming that a separate matter one you were not aware existed had been resolved. You were CC'd as a courtesy. You find the email on your phone while sitting at the table. 47 words. Your name in the header. No memory of reading it. The third document is a separation agreement. Here is what you knew. 1 incident, 1 call, 1 referral to professionals, 1 assurance that it was handled. Here is what was true. The firm was not a resource the label deployed when problems arose. It was infrastructure, built into the operational architecture before you arrived, running through your tenure, continuing after. The system was not designed to manage individual incidents. It was designed to contain a pattern, and a competent manager who asked every right question about contracts and routing and platform risk, and never asked the one question that was hardest to ask, made the whole structure easier to maintain. Not the origin, not outside it. The general counsel slides a pen across the table. Someone bought it specifically for meetings like this one. You pick it up. The woman from Portland is 27. Her name appears in none of these documents. That is the architecture, not a hole. A room nobody enters. 6 months later, you are in the same Silver Lake apartment on a $4 200-day-month consulting retainer that covers the rent and nothing else the previous 14 months covered, which was not money exactly, but the sense that the thing you were building was worth what it consumed. Darius releases a second album 9 months after Weather System. 28 million first-week streams compared to 41 million. Billboard debut at 23. The reviews use the word consolidating. He has a new manager, someone from New York with a background in brand consulting. The sportswear company does not return. A different brand runs a 6-week campaign in month 4 of the new cycle. It is not prominent, it is present. The industry moves not forward, not backward. It redistributes. The investigation generates 2 follow-up pieces. The journalist receives an award nomination. The Century City firm is named in a civil suit filed by one of the corroborated but unnamed women. The suit is against the label. Your name does not appear in the filing. You are not a party. You are a person who made 11 calls to a firm now named in that suit. And the distance between those 2 facts is precise and not as wide as it felt on the Monday you signed the agreement. The label settles. The amount is not disclosed. You think about the parking structure in Burbank, not the call, the texture of it. Concrete smell, engine running. The way the phone felt while you read her messages. The drive to Culver City afterward. The vocal overdub. It's good. You are competent. That is what doesn't resolve. Not reckless, not malicious. You read contracts correctly. You built a system that worked exactly as designed. The design was the problem, and the problem was invisible from inside it, and you were inside it, and being competent inside it is the specific way you were inside it. Priya, the London booking agent, emails in month 4. A new client. 2 sentences of description. 3 questions you send back about process, about what happens when something goes wrong. Who gets called? Who is in the room? Questions that cost something to learn to ask. Priya answers in 2 hours. You read her answers in the Silver Lake apartment, window open, and sit with them before deciding anything. The woman from Portland is still 27. She did not age out of this the way you did. She continued to be a person who had that experience and then had a life that contained it. You don't know what that life looks like. You know only that the parking structure is part of it and that you are part of the parking structure. You are back in the rental car outside the Walgreens in Atlanta. 11:47 p.m. 23 missed calls. Darius has posted 3 more videos. The receipt from your coffee is on the passenger seat. Everything you built over 14 months is ending in a parking lot. And the parking lot is where it was always going to end. Because parking lots are where this industry does its actual work, not in the deal memos or the routing spreadsheets or the late-night studios, but in the gap between the call you make and the call you should have made 6 months earlier. Here is what is true about Darius Cole. He made music that a lot of people found genuinely meaningful. That is true. He operated inside a system that absorbed the cost of his behavior through money, silence, and the professional competence of people like you. That is also true. The music did not cancel the system. The system did not cancel the music. They ran on the same infrastructure, reviewed in the same Monday meetings, managed by the same Century City firm on the same retainer. They were not separate things that overlapped. They were the same thing. Here is what is true about you. You were good at the work. Measurably, demonstrably good. The streams went up. The deals closed. The crises were contained. You read contracts correctly. You asked every right question except the one that was hardest to ask and most necessary. You were not the origin of the harm. You were not outside it. Both things are true. Both will remain true regardless of what you do next. There is no version of Priya's email, no set of 3 careful questions that separates you from the parking structure in Burbank. It happened. You made the call. You drove to Culver City. You said it's good. The woman from Portland continued to be a person for whom that night was not a career data point, but something that occurred in her actual life and stayed there. You were 29. You were competent. You did not ask. The only question left is the one that belongs to you now, sitting in this parking lot with 23 missed calls and a cooling cup of coffee. Not whether you were good at the job. You were. Not whether the music was real. It was. The question is whether, if you had been told on the Tuesday Celeste called you, if you had known the full shape of what you were entering, you would have walked away. Because if the answer is that you might not have, this story is not about a manager in Atlanta at 11:47 p.m. It's about every person who has ever been competent inside a system and called that competence a reason not to look harder. Drop a comment. Answer honestly. Subscribe for more. See you in the next one.